My name is Olivia. I'm 53 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with my husband, Ben, who's the same age, and our daughter, making us a family of 3. Ben and I got married after meeting at work, and back then, it was common to quit your job once you got married, which I did. Aside from one issue, our marriage has been smooth sailing. That issue is my mother-in-law. For some reason, she's always been tough on me. Olivia, welcome. You didn't have to go out of your way to come here. You don't want to see me, do you? It's fine, really. Every time we meet, it's like this, so I'm not fond of my mother-in-law. Despite our poor relationship, I thought I was building a happy home. When over 20 years had passed since our marriage and our daughter was in her late 20s, I noticed something.
What's this withdrawal history?
A significant amount of money was being withdrawn from our joint account every month. We intended to use this account for major illnesses or for when our daughter eventually got married. I immediately asked my husband when he came home from work.
Can I ask you something? Money has been withdrawn from that account every month, and it seems to have been happening for about 10 years. Did something happen?
Oh, that. Actually, my mom got scammed by a supplement sales scheme a while back.
Really? Did the money come back?
No, it didn't, and we just had to suck it up.
Scams really are closer to home than you think.
Plus, my dad died when I was in middle school, you know? Things have been tight. So, I've been sending her some money every month. I see. But you could have at least mentioned it to me. Sorry. My mom told me not to bother you with it, and she didn't want anyone to know she got scammed. You know how proud she is. I understood the reason behind the mysterious withdrawals, but it made me wonder how long we were going to continue sending money. My husband, noticing my expression, said with an annoyed look.
What, you got a problem with it? It's fine. Our daughter's getting married and moving out soon anyway. Once it's just the 2 of us, we won't have to spend much, so it won't be a problem.
He was talking about our daughter. Our 26-year-old daughter is planning to have her wedding next month. So, I thought there was some logic to what my husband said and just responded with, okay, ending the conversation. However, after that, my husband's attitude towards me noticeably changed. Mentioning that money must have really irked him, as he became even more of a tyrant around the house.
Hey, is dinner ready yet?
I just finished. I'll serve it now.
I told you to have it ready on the table by the time I get back. How many times do I have to say it? I can't be expected to know when you'll be home every day. I'm not psychic. Don't talk back to me when you're just a stay-at-home wife. After all this time, you still can't do anything right. I'm sorry.
These exhausting days wore on me. But I've put those feelings aside for today. Because it's my daughter's wedding day. Seeing my daughter smiling so happily, I felt a sense of closure.
She looks absolutely beautiful,
I mentioned to Ben, while keeping my eyes on our daughter during the reception. However, no matter how long I waited, there was no response from Ben.
Ben?
Huh? Oh, what?
What do you mean, what? Why are you on your phone at a time like this?
To my disbelief, Ben was fiddling with his phone even as our daughter was giving her speech. And I caught a glimpse of his screen. He was on a chat app.
Unbelievable.
I muttered under my breath, but Ben, engrossed in his phone, didn't seem to hear. Then, Ben's mother, seated next to him, chided him.
Ben, put away your phone at least for now.
Yeah. I felt a surge of anger at how quickly Ben listened to his mother compared to me. But this was a celebration. So I did my best to suppress those feelings. After the reception, Ben and I took a cab home. Upon arriving, strangely, Ben rang the doorbell of our own house.
Why did you ring the bell?
I asked, puzzled by his inexplicable action. To my shock, a woman, who shouldn't have been in our house, came out. You're late. You said you'd be back sooner.
Sorry. The tiresome greetings dragged on. Who is this woman?
Then Ben stood beside the woman, turned around, and looked at me from inside the entrance.
I'm done with our retirement life together. I'm starting a new married life with my young lover. What?
Did my husband just call this woman his lover? She clearly looked younger than him, about the same age as our 26-year-old daughter. Tentatively, I asked,
Excuse me, how old are you?
Huh? I'm 28, so what? Age differences don't bother me.
No, that's not what I meant.
What are you trying to say?
Are you jealous because she's younger and prettier than you? That's not it. It's disgusting that you're cheating with someone who's about the same age as your daughter. Please don't talk about our pure love that way. That's right. And it's your fault. My fault? Because you notice the money from that account. Pointing out every little thing about money, it's annoying. Of course, I'd want a divorce. With the kid getting married, I thought it was the perfect timing to remarry this one. So that's why you suddenly started treating me worse.
That's right, so there. Poor old lady.
Asphalt hurts, doesn't it?
Suddenly, Ben pushed me, and I fell onto the rough road.
Ow, that hurts.
The shock and pain made me groan involuntarily.
See you. We'll talk more about it later. Bye-bye.
Ben and his lover went inside the house. I couldn't process what had just happened all at once and remained sitting on the road, crying.
Olivia!
Someone called my name, and when I looked up, it was my mother-in-law, whom I disliked.
Mom!
Then she took my hand and said,
Come on, dry your tears. I'll show them hell. Huh?
Confused, I let her lead me away.
Come on, up we go.
I'm sorry for intruding. She had brought me to her house. Why were you there? While making tea, my mother-in-law answered.
While at the reception, Ben was constantly on his phone, right? I wondered what he was so engrossed in, and it was clear he was messaging another woman. Oh! But I thought you wouldn't want to hear such things from me, so I pretended not to see. Still, I couldn't help but follow them to their house because I was concerned.
So, you did care. I thought you hated me.
That's my line. I heard from Ben that Olivia finds dealing with her mother-in-law a hassle, so I thought you hated me too. I never said that about you. Really? What does that mean? There's one more thing that's been bothering me.
Looking around the living room. It filled with colorful fresh flowers and elaborate teacups. It hardly seemed like the home of someone struggling financially due to a scam.
About the supplement purchase scam and Ben sending you money every month. What? Me getting scammed? That's nonsense. I haven't been scammed.
It was clear that something was off, our conversations didn't align. So, we laid everything out, including what my husband had told each of us. And it became clear that he had been lying to both of us. After clearing up the misunderstanding, my mother-in-law and I apologized for our past issues and discussed our next steps.
Leave it to me,
she said, placing her hand on my shoulder. And so, our two-woman strategy meeting began. Later, my husband called, saying he wanted to talk about the divorce and asked me to come back home.
It's finally happening. Let's go, Olivia. Okay.
I headed home with my mother-in-law. Upon arriving, we rang the doorbell. The door opened, and my husband came out. Took you long enough. Come in. Wait, Mom.
I'm coming in.
He must have expected me alone. His surprise at my mother-in-law's presence was evident. We were led to the living room. Welcome. Who's this granny?
That's, my mom. Seriously. Why is she here? Is it a problem if I'm here?
My mother-in-law marched into the living room and sat down on the sofa with a thud. My husband, the mistress, and I cautiously approached the sofa.
First, may I know your name? Chloe.
So, Chloe.
You're about the same age as my granddaughter. Do you understand how despicable cheating is? A lecture now? Annoying. Rather than that, I want to talk about the divorce. Mom, please be quiet. You be quiet. And I have a question for you, Ben. It seems you lied to Olivia about me being scammed. And you've been spreading lies to keep us apart. All part of your plan to avoid getting caught, I see. Well, You must have thought up that excuse for when I found out you were withdrawing money without telling her. Excuse me? As if I'd be out of money. If we're getting divorced, such details don't matter, right? I want everything settled properly if we're divorcing.
Then sign here first. We can talk about the details later. He thrust the divorce papers at me. His section already filled out. I'll get a pen, so sign it quickly. All right, all right. I quickly took the pen and signed my name on the divorce papers. My husband watched, looking pleased with himself. Good, you've signed. Now, about what's next, you need to pack your things and leave this house. Since this house belongs to us, the poor, divorced lady will have to leave, please. But, it looks like you don't have anywhere to go after being kicked out.
Ha, this is truly ridiculous, Olivia. Indeed, Mom. What are you two laughing about? What's so funny right now?
Because this house is in my name.
What? No, but this house was a wedding gift from you, Mom. It's supposed to be in my name, right?
Nope, it's still in my name. After all, this land was originally owned by your father. It was inherited by me, so we never changed the deed.
Land from Dad's estate? Wait, Dad owned land?
Yes, he owns several buildings and apartments, so we've never been short on money. The idea of being scammed into poverty is just absurd.
I had no idea we had such assets.
I didn't want you to rely too much on that and end up not working because you've always been lazy. If you knew about the land, who knows what you would have done. Realizing his mother didn't trust him, my husband looked a mix of angry and disappointed. So, the house belongs to her. And the sale has already been processed, so please leave within a month.
Sale? Without telling us?
I got Olivia's permission.
What about me? There's no need to listen to a cheating son. So I can't live in this house anymore?
As Chloe looked disappointed, my husband began desperately trying to appease her. No, even if that were the case, with my salary, we could easily afford an apartment. You know how much I earn since we work at the same company, right? Yeah, but I wanted a single-family home. Wait, you two met at work? You found a mistress at the same place you married me from. How did the two of you end up together? I'm curious. Despite the obvious age difference, I was genuinely interested in how that relationship developed.
He was in charge of training me when I joined the company straight after high school. He was kind and taught me a lot. That's why I fell for him. I've always liked older men since my parents divorced when I was little and I didn't have a father. So you joined at 18. And now you're 28, which means Ben was 43 10 years ago. Unbelievable, really.
My mother-in-law looked at my husband as if he were something vile. Understandably so. The fact that he harbored such feelings for someone the same age as his daughter made me feel nauseous.
Didn't you feel ashamed going after someone the same age as your child?
Absolutely.
Our values are just too different. Is this really my child? Besides, do we really have to leave?
As my husband, now panicking about losing the house, asked his mother.
Yes, please leave. At least until I find a new place to live.
1 month is more than enough for that. Hey, can I go ahead and file these divorce papers?
Shut up. The house is what's important right now.
My husband shouted at me when I interjected.
Oh dear, Ben, do you always treat Olivia like this? That's right. He's always demanding dinner be ready the moment he gets home and expecting me to read his mind without him saying a word.
Isn't it normal to scold and teach your wife?
Just like your father in every way.
My mother-in-law shouted, holding her head in frustration. Her usually calm voice rose in volume, surprising both me and my husband.
Mom? Your father was cheating with a younger woman at his company for over 20 years. Plus, he was terribly domineering, a real tyrant back in the day. Hearing Ben talk just brought back all those bad memories.
It turned out my mother-in-law had been troubled by the very same things as me. That explained why she suddenly became kind and supportive towards me.
Olivia, my husband passed away early, so I ended up alone. You should get a divorce quickly too. I was planning on it from the start. Ben, I'll file the divorce papers. And I'll be asking for alimony from you. You're taking the house and now you want alimony too? You're shameless. The house isn't my concern. It belongs to the mother-in-law. I'm not paying anything. After all, there's no concrete evidence of cheating, is there? Too bad for you. The one who should feel sorry is you. What? I pulled out my phone, played a video, and showed it to Ben and Chloe. What the heck? That's us. Isn't that the mall we went to last week? The video captured Ben and Chloe behaving like a couple. They was holding hands at the mall before heading into a building in a busy district, with plenty of footage to prove it. And what's this building? It says $60 per night? You went and filmed this too? Were you following us around? Auntie has too much time on her hands. Oh right, you're a stay-at-home wife. Guess you've got nothing better to do than this. You sure you want to be that bold? I could send this video to your company, you know. You're threatening us? Sure, it would hurt if the company found out, but rumors die down. So, your threats don't work on me. Do you two realize? Realize what? Phones record the date and location of videos taken. So what? The date and time of this video are strange, aren't they? It's in the middle of a weekday. What happened to work? Did you skip? No, that's not it. Right. We took a day off. We were on paid leave that day. Ben momentarily showed panic but quickly recovered. Oh, so it was a day off. Then why are you two wearing suits in the video? Maybe we should check with your company. Wait, stop it. Why? If it's a day off, what's the harm in checking with your company? Unless. Most likely, it wasn't a day off, they were just blatantly skipping work. While the affair itself might not result in company sanctions, doing it during work hours is a different story. So, are you going to pay the alimony or not? I'll pay. Thank you. And Chloe. Suddenly called by her name, she jolted. What? Of course, you'll also be paying alimony. No objections, right? I do have objections. What? Did you say something? Nothing. I'll pay, okay? Good girl. I smiled, satisfied. She probably figured paying alimony was safer for her income than risking getting fired or demoted for workplace infidelity. But I don't want to leave this house. It's filled with memories. Suddenly, Ben tried a sympathy tactic, pleading with me and his mother. Memories? I have those too, you know. Watching our daughter grow up and get married in this house. Don't act like you're the only one who's suffered. I couldn't help but raise my voice, agitated by Ben's insensitivity. Yet, he continued to beg not to leave. Please, Mom, can't you cancel the sale? It's possible since there hasn't been a buyer yet. Then. But I won't. Mom. Lying to make Olivia and me fight, just to cover up your affair? That's no joke. You're no son of mine. You don't have to go that far. As your mother, it's precisely why I can't forgive you. It's embarrassing to have raised a child who turned out like this. Ben looked down. He possibly never expecting to be disowned by his own mother. After a while, he looked up, facing both me and his mother. I was wrong. Is an apology enough? I'll pay the alimony, so no complaints, right? His arrogant tone made my mother-in-law and me exchange looks. Can you believe this guy seemed to echo from her without a word? Of course, we wouldn't accept such a half-hearted apology, responding in unison with no and absolutely not. Then, Ben finally lost his temper. Oh, I see. Even when I'm apologizing like this? You, especially, should feel bad for making a man apologize. What a nonsensical outburst. Is he even okay?
I felt an urgent need to divorce this man as soon as possible. When I remained silent, my husband further stated,
"If you're not going to give us the house, then I won't pay alimony or split any property with you." How's that? It must be tough for you, a stay-at-home wife with no income. You're losing your chance to get any money. What will you do now?
I was appalled by his forceful approach. Though I had hoped to avoid this route, I had no choice. I operated my phone and played another video that I had hoped not to use unless necessary.
I really didn't want to use this, but since you're pushing it. Another proof of affair? I've already admitted to that, no need to show more. It's not about the affair. Look closely.
I turned the screen towards him.
Is this from after the wedding?
Yes.
The day you insisted I leave and shoved me hard.
This video was taken by my mother-in-law, who followed us home that day. She sensed the unusual tension between us and decided to record it just in case.
Mom, you're quite good at filming, Mom. Everyone's faces fit perfectly in the frame. Oh, thank you. Maybe I should add this to my hobbies in retirement?
As the video progressed, it showed me being shoved by my husband.
Ugh, it looks painful no matter how many times I see it. After that, I went to the hospital and was diagnosed with bruises all over. I have photos of all the bruises. What? What are you planning to do?
I then played my final card.
If you refuse to pay alimony and split the property, I'll take this video to the police. Police?
Yes.
I'll file a report for assault. How about that? Become a criminal.
It's possible.
So, Ben, what will you do?
Damn it.
What do you want?
I laid out the divorce terms that my mother-in-law and I had agreed upon in advance.
First, Ben and Chloe must leave this house and hand it over to my mother-in-law. Then, you must pay me alimony, and we'll split the joint account money.
Just these 3 conditions.
Oh, Olivia, you're being generous.
Ben clenched his fist, deliberating whether to agree to these terms. Finally deciding, he slowly looked at me and said just one word.
Agreed. I'll hold on to the divorce papers for now. The details will be handled by a lawyer recommended by my mother-in-law. So, goodbye, we'll probably never see each other again. And don't come to my parents' house for a while. I don't want to see your face. This wasn't supposed to happen.
Just before my mother-in-law and I left the house, my husband muttered that. And so, my divorce from my husband was settled. 6 months later, while I was reading a book on land management, a call came. Thinking it was my daughter, I checked my phone, only to find that it was Ben, my ex-husband.
What? That's a shame. But what does he want?
Feeling disappointed but curious about what he wanted, I reluctantly answered the phone.
Hello? How much longer do you intend to make me suffer?
Ben began by blaming me, instantly souring my mood.
What's this all of a sudden? You're annoying. Since we got divorced, you've become so arrogant. Taking my property and acting all high and mighty, huh? Stealing? That sounds terrible. It's all your fault, you know. So, what do you want? I'm busy right now. As if someone who's been a housewife forever would be hired anywhere. Stop pretending to be busy. Just get to the point. It pisses me off. After we split, I started living with Chloe in an apartment, but somehow my workplace affair got exposed. It was definitely you.
I could swear it wasn't me. Likely, Ben and Chloe's frequent outings had raised suspicions long ago. I doubt Ben would listen to what I have to say, but I told him anyway.
It wasn't me. After all, I got money from you for alimony and property division.
I've deleted that video, by the way.
Really?
To my surprise, Ben seemed to believe me. Then, he began to share his current predicament, seemingly seeking sympathy. As if he was begging me to listen to his pitiful story.
After the affair came to light at work, Chloe got transferred to a small sales office in the suburbs, and they sent me to the exact opposite direction, deliberately keeping us apart.
Ah, so you two were separated. That's too bad. I replied nonchalantly, scratching the tip of my nose. Perhaps pleased to receive some sympathy, my ex-husband's voice grew even more animated.
Yeah! And the people in this rural area I was sent to are so stubborn and old-fashioned, we just don't click. Well, it's not like they could ever understand someone who used to work hard at the headquarters like me.
I wonder what the purpose of his call was. I still don't know. His story was just too long.
And with the distance between me and Chloe, I decided to quit my job. What? Yeah, after finding out my mom inherited my dad's land and became wealthy, I thought, why not live off some of that wealth as passive income? But quitting your job just like that?
Suddenly remembering his original purpose for calling, Ben's tone shifted back to anger.
Yeah, that's right. When I went to see Mom, she told me, "You're no son of mine. Don't show your face here again." And she even said she'd leave all her land to you.
Oh, is that so?
It's ridiculous that my mom's wealth would go to you after we're divorced. I can't accept that. You need to talk to her for me.
Talk to her about what?
Like, give me a building or something. If you ask her, she'll listen to you, right?
Why would I do that? We're divorced, we're strangers now. Absolutely not. Then Ben switched tactics again, pleading from a position of weakness.
His emotions are like a roller coaster. Isn't this kind of scary? Please, I'm begging you. I told you I quit my job, right? Without it, I have no income.
That's not my problem.
Even when I'm asking nicely, I still get a no? Fine then, have it your way. Enjoy your lonely, divorced life. Bye.
Ben hung up after having his say. I wonder if he's really okay with how things turned out. Reading. But thinking about it is just a waste of my time. I decided to go back to my. Later, my mother-in-law informed me that the house had found a buyer and was successfully sold. The thought of never being able to return to the home where our family had lived made my heart ache, but seeing my daughter happily settled in a new place helped me move on. Moreover, as an apology, my mother-in-law gifted me a unit in one of her apartment buildings. With the alimony and property division money from Ben and Chloe, it looked like I wouldn't have to worry about finances for a while. I also heard from my mother-in-law that Chloe broke up with Ben after finding out she couldn't inherit any of my mother-in-law's wealth. It turned out she wasn't looking for a father figure in Ben but was simply after the money. The pitiful end to a man who had worked hard, married, and raised a child, made me think I could write a novel about it. That's how little sympathy I had for him. Now, I'm learning about land management from my mother-in-law. This new challenge is exciting for someone who's been a stay-at-home mom all her life. Every day is fulfilling, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds now that I'm done raising my child. When do you die? Even if the love has totally gone cold, who can say something like this to his wife who's been told she has 6 months to live? I was beyond anger and shock. I was utterly dumbfounded.
What? You're the one with limited time left. What?
My name is Julia. I believe aging gracefully is an eternal goal for both men and women. I just turned 60, but I haven't forgotten to stay fashionable as a woman. Not for my husband. When I look in the mirror and see my hair, makeup, and outfit all perfectly put together, it gives me a buzz. At work, people are surprised to learn I'm 60 and it feels good when they say, "No way." My marriage has gone stale, and I often wonder why I married this man. I'm a hardworking editor at a weekly comic magazine. My husband isn't a big earner, yet he opposes me working. When men work, women should be doing house chores, he says with a straight face. I can only sigh with these words. It's like he time-traveled from the Stone Age. I want to tell him that even in the animal kingdom, it's the female lions that hunt. I find fulfillment in my job, giving advice to young aspiring comic artists with big dreams and working together to create captivating characters and engaging stories. People in their 60s are young these days. The days 60 years old living in retirement are long gone, or so I believe. But my husband thinks differently.
How long are you planning to work? You're already 60. You're definitely being treated as a burden and useless at work.
I was fuming, but if I get into an argument, my husband never backs down, so I end up being the one who gives in.
That's not true. Today's 60-year-olds are performing as well as the younger employees. I won't tolerate you neglecting housework because of your job.
My husband, who genuinely believes that housework is a wife's job, cannot be watching the news. He is the worst kind of chauvinist, thinking men should be dominant and women submissive, not to mention he has a weakness for young, attractive women. I graduated from college and landed my current job. I had a dream of becoming a comic book artist until high school, but I gave up because I didn't have the skills. That's why I support those who chase their dreams. I was so engrossed in my work that, before I knew it, I turned 40. Relatives approached me with matchmaking proposals, and I started dreaming of married life. Marriage is a significant life decision, so you shouldn't rush into it. But fearing I would be single for life if I missed this opportunity, I accepted a matchmaking proposal and had a blind date with my now husband, who was 41 at the time. Back then, my husband acted like a sweet gentleman, hiding his true colors so I couldn't see through him. As we both were over 40 and I had no intention of quitting my job, we don't have children. My parents are in their 80s, but unlike my husband, they seem to be in tune with the times and never pressure me by saying they want to see grandkids. There are many women who want children but can't have them. My parents understand that questions like when will we see our grandkids, and when will you have kids, can be burdensome. Lately, my husband is often on his smartphone, and he whispers during calls. I wondered if he might be cheating, but realizing that I'm not even mad probably means that I've fallen out of love with him. One day, my mother-in-law, who lives nearby, came over to our house. Her husband passed away 3 years ago, and she now lives alone. My mother-in-law is 85 but always so composed, and my husband is no match for her. It's not out of respect, probably more about wanting her wealth.
That old witch is such a penny pincher. She must have around 200 grand saved up. I have no siblings, so I'll inherit it all. Can't she just kick the bucket already?
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not.
Gotta play nice, or she might leave all her money to some charity in her will or something.
At that moment, his mother came from the next room.
Sorry for being such a cheapskate, she said. Mom!
My husband's face turned pale, and he unfairly lashed out at me with fury.
You idiot! Why didn't you tell me she was here? Shut it! Keep it down, you're disturbing the neighbors.
There was no way to deny the horrible things he'd said, so he hung his head in silence. While my husband was taking the shower, my mother-in-law talked to me.
How long have things been rocky between you two? This doesn't seem like a normal slump. It seems quite serious.
I smiled wryly and said, "You noticed?"
Listen, Julia. If you really can't take it anymore, divorce is an option. There's an old saying about the suffering of loathing someone you're stuck with. It's unbearable. There's no need to consider me in any of this.
My mother-in-law's kindness touched my heart. She is wise, cultured, and refined, nothing like my husband. I can hardly believe they are related. My husband must be some primitive man who time-traveled here. This year, my husband had his annual physical at work, but something seemed off. At 61, his unhealthy lifestyle might be catching up with him. He often comes home late and drunk. He claims he was out with coworkers at a bar, but I know he's been going to strip clubs. He shouldn't underestimate a housewife's intuition. My husband had a follow-up at the hospital, and one day the doctor called. The doctor said, before we talk to him, we'd like to discuss something with the family. It felt like something out of a soap opera, and I had a bad feeling. What the doctor told me at the hospital shocked me.
He only has 6 months to live?
The news that my husband had only 6 months left hit me like a ton of bricks, and my emotions were all over the place. I was surprised that I didn't feel more shocked, felt a little pity, almost felt relieved, but then felt guilty for feeling that way. Most wives would be devastated, but I found myself putting on an act to look more upset than I really was.
Could there be some mistake?
I'm afraid not. Please brace yourself.
Whether or not to tell him depends on his personality, and since you know your husband best. What do you mean by personality? If he's the type to become despondent and reckless, it might be dangerous to break the news suddenly. If he has a positive attitude and strong will to live, it might be better to tell him. If my husband hears he only has 6 months to live, I can see him becoming reckless. But going to strip clubs just because he has no symptoms, and continuing to drink is not a good idea. I returned home with a heavy heart, but I concluded that I must tell him. When my husband came home at night, I spoke. Honey, we need to talk. What's with the drama? I'm busy, unlike you. I'm busy too. You make yourself busy. If you don't like being busy, quit your job. It's a man's shame to have his wife work. It's as if I don't make enough. I was taken aback by how outdated my husband's mindset was. He doesn't seem to know that in most households both spouses work nowadays, and stay-at-home wives are less common. I went to the hospital today. The hospital? Please, listen calmly. Stop beating around the bush. I told you I'm busy. I blurted out in frustration. Doctor said that the remaining life is 6 months. For a few seconds, my husband stared at me with a straight face, then burst into laughter and covering his mouth with his hand. 6 months to live? Yes. Calm down, don't become reckless. Idiot, who do you think would become reckless? Don't get ahead of yourself or underestimate me. My husband was talking nonsense, probably due to the shock. Well, it's karma. Such a reckless life leads to that result. I was surprised that he was self-aware. So, you should stop drinking so much alcohol. Shut up. For a businessman, attending a drinking party is part of the job for good relationships. Only women would think that drinking means playing around. I'm going to keep going out drinking. You should stop. Come straight home after work. Then my husband grinned from ear to ear. Wait a second, don't tell me you want to spend more time as a couple because there is only 6 months left? I didn't want that at all, but I had to play the part of the dutiful wife. Of course, I want us to spend more time together. Don't be stupid, I don't have that kind of time. Honey. But he cut me off. All right, end of discussion. Time is money and it's a waste to spend it with you. I was amazed at how easily he could say something so hurtful. But it might be just a reaction to the shock, so I didn't say anything more. I was worried about how he was taking it and sneaked a peek at him in his study. He was talking to someone on the phone. Hi, Miley? Well, I wouldn't exactly call it good news, that would probably be bad karma, but my wife apparently was told at the hospital today. She only has 6 months to live. I didn't ask what the diagnosis was, but if they're talking 6 months, it's probably late-stage cancer or something. At first, I didn't understand what my husband was saying. It's just 6 months of putting up with this. I have life insurance on my wife, and my mother is 85, so she'll probably kick the bucket soon too. Once my wife is gone, Miley, let's live together. I want to start my life over. I was shocked. My husband misunderstood the fact terribly. But my anger reached its peak when I heard a conversation with a woman called Miley. I am very unwilling to tell the truth. He can't even make fun of people. I will not allow him to talk like that even to his own mother. I muttered in a voice so chilling that it gave even me the shivers. Well, go ahead and live the rest of your life with that misunderstanding. Though by a lifetime, I mean 6 months. After I told him about the limited time, my husband not only came home late but often didn't come home at all. He lied about business trips and went on vacations. It's shocking. My husband started dressing flashy, buying expensive watches, and seemed to be partying literally every day. He was also buying loads of gifts. It's not like my husband is rolling in dough. Is he counting on the life insurance money after my supposed demise? He's lost all decency as a human being. 3 months have passed since the life expectancy news. I asked my husband, who looked pale. Are you feeling unwell? I've been feeling sluggish lately and get tired easily. I get winded just climbing the stairs at the station. Guess I'm getting old, huh? You should cut back on the booze. Buzz off. I told you, drinking is part of the job when I'm entertaining clients. If you've got nothing to say but depressing crap, then drop dead already.
That really ticked me off, but I purposely didn't argue.
Nagging women are the worst. You and that old woman should just drop dead.
Behind my husband, who was spewing abuse, stood his mother.
You talking about me when you say that, old witch? Whoa. You startled me.
My husband shot me an angry glare, but my mother-in-law asked again.
You calling me a old witch? No way, I've never called you a old witch, Mom. I have this annoying boss at work named Ms. Wiz. Ah, Ms. Wiz.
My husband couldn't meet his mother's suspicious gaze and looked down. My husband, who wanted to complain that I purposely didn't tell him that my mother-in-law was here, went off somewhere. 4 months have passed since the life expectancy news. My husband was coughing more, taking more time off work, and, though he used to have high blood pressure, now he has low blood pressure. He's dizzy from low blood pressure and almost fell down the stairs. And still, he goes on his business trips. I'm disgusted. So, he chooses to spend his final days with a mistress instead of his wife. However, the fact that he's gallivanting with his mistress while believing his wife only has a few months to live is utterly disheartening. My husband says his hands and feet are cold even on warm days, and he complains of pain everywhere.
If you're not feeling well, you should turn down the business trips. Don't tell me how to do my job. The business trips are the only thing I look forward to, they're important assignments only I can handle. Should I call your office and ask your boss to excuse you from the business trips?
As expected, my husband's face turned red as he shouted.
Try it, and see what happens. I will never forgive you.
I had to stifle my laughter. I can only feel pity for my husband who brought this upon himself, but I am torn about whether to tell my mother-in-law the truth. She has been good to me since we were newlyweds. Then, an unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman I had never seen before.
May I ask who you are? My name is Miley. Nice to meet you.
Could it be Miley is my husband's mistress? She had the audacity to come to our house. I was ready to fight.
I'll cut to the chase. Please set Mike free. Set him free?
I asked, genuinely surprised by this young lady. Even for a woman like me, Miley was strikingly beautiful, petite, with a great figure and a flawless sense of fashion. I couldn't fathom why a woman as enchanting as her was involved with my husband. My husband isn't rich, so she's not after his money. And it's hard to believe it's true love. So, is this some sort of scam?
Mike is suffering. I think it's due to stress. Would you consider divorcing him? She asked.
I couldn't help but smirk at her audacity, and I retorted.
What you're doing is crossing a line, darling. Isn't it terribly inappropriate to approach a man's wife like this?
But she wasn't fazed at all.
You know, sometimes you meet your soulmate after you're already married. It's foolish to stay bound by marriage in such cases. We only have one life to live.
That's when it hit me. I needed to end this conversation before I lost my cool and did something I might regret. So, I cut her off with a smile. He's been set free from this earthly realm, so no worries. But whether he's in heaven or took a nosedive to hell, I'm not the Grim Reaper, so I wouldn't know. She looked confused for a moment and then laughed heartily.
You're hilarious with the Grim Reaper joke. I'm not one bit funny. How old are you, by the way? I'm 29.
29, still in her 20s. It almost made me dizzy. He was seeing a woman more than 30 years younger than himself. I couldn't hide my astonishment. If you don't mind, what do you do for a living?
He came to the place where I work. He's very kind, a really good man. So, you're genuinely dating with my husband? Absolutely. Mike's strong and skilled.
Stop. I interrupted, glaring at her with a smile.
Say another word and I might just have to strangle you.
She laughed. I'm serious, it's not funny at all, I scolded her. She fell silent for a few seconds, staring at me, then spoke. I have to say, I'm genuinely surprised. You're nothing like I imagined from meeting you today.
Did he talk trash about me? Say I'm a witch or something?
Miley burst into laughter again. No, he never said anything bad about you. But honestly, I didn't expect you to be such a wonderful person. I'm not desperate enough to feel flattered by a mistress's compliment, but I began to feel that Miley might not be so bad. I was determined not to like her, but with a woman like her being kind, any Neanderthal of a man would fall head over heels.
So, it's true love, huh? But soon you'll find out if your feelings are real. What?
She tilted her head adorably. I don't have any lingering feelings for my two-timing husband, but I felt a tinge of sympathy for this girl. 6 months have passed since the terminal diagnosis. My husband, looking pale, took another day off work, while I returned from work full of energy. Seeing me like this, he sneered. When are you gonna kick the bucket, with a chuckle. How could he say that to his wife, who he believes has only 6 months to live? I kept my anger in check, staying calm.
Seriously, you and my mother are like cockroaches, just never giving up.
Leave me out of it, but you better not badmouth your mother. I snapped. Suddenly, my husband flew into a rage, yelling.
Who do you think you're talking to? Ah, I see, you've got nothing to lose. Well then, let me give you a piece of my mind before you croak. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life.
The final words that should never have been said. My husband finally crossed the line. I felt a pillar of rage rising through me, and I blurted out. Is that your last will and testament?
Last will? Hold on, you didn't write some weird will, did you? Did you write a will? It's been 6 months since the terminal diagnosis.
What the heck are you talking about? You're the one with the terminal illness. Have you finally lost it? I was beyond angry and shocked. I was dumbfounded.
Huh? The terminal diagnosis is yours. What?
My husband's face froze for a moment, then he burst into mocking laughter.
You really need to be hospitalized. You're not making any sense. Get to the hospital today.
With that, he stormed into his study. The next morning, I found my husband collapsed in the house. I immediately called an ambulance and informed my mother-in-law before heading to the hospital. After the examination and discovering the truth, my husband lost it, yelling at me in front of the doctor and nurse.
Why the hell didn't you tell me something this important? I did, 6 months ago. Stop lying. You're the one with the terminal illness.
Whether he remembered our conversation from 6 months ago or not, he was in shock. I never actually said who got the terminal diagnosis.
I see, you kept quiet about your mistake. Are you the devil?
This is a hospital, please keep your voice down.
Shut up, all of you. Are you in cahoots?
He was pointing fingers at the doctor and nurse. It was chaos. My husband was in a frenzy.
Enough, I won't be admitted to a hospital that sets me up like this. They might assassinate me. You're exaggerating. Shut up. How can I trust any of you?
He shook off the nurse trying to restrain him and stormed out of the room. I had no intention of stopping him from the beginning. I apologized to the doctor and nurse for my husband's disrespectful outburst on his behalf and went home. A few days later, a pale-faced husband returned. When he told Miley the truth, she apparently broke up with him. I couldn't help but think of Miley's face and thought, I guess it was intolerable for her after all. It would have been better if she just broke up with him, but Miley was married. It's not uncommon for club hostesses to lie about being single while married. It seems Miley's husband was in prison and recently got out. When Miley's affair came to light and her husband confronted her, she spilled the beans about my husband.
Help me! He's threatening to throw me into the sea alive. Even if I said I'd help, how am I supposed to rescue you from such a scary guy? You're so calm even though your husband's in danger.
Who are you to say that?
Maybe you should flee the country? I don't have the money.
Turns out, he spent all his savings counting on insurance money 6 months later. With his frequent business trips, or rather, vacations with Miley, and probably spending all the money, it's not surprising that he ran through a fortune in a short time.
Please, can you lend me some money?
I don't have any, I said, pushing him away coldly.
Can you borrow some from my mother for me? She won't lend me anything, she's such a cheapskate.
You could borrow from Ms. Wiz.
What?
Just like in a comic strip, my startled husband glares at me.
I've told you time and again to let me know in advance when she is coming over. Are you doing this on purpose?
You, on the other hand, were given 6 months to live. Oh, that was half a year ago, so your time is almost up, isn't it? I was taken aback by this callous remark, but my husband was even more dumbfounded by the unbelievable words from his mother.
Is that something you say to your own son? How many times have you said the lines that no one would say to a real mother?
My husband was speechless at this blow.
Mike, apologize sincerely to Julia. We'll talk after that.
My husband couldn't swallow his pride until the very end and shouted.
This is my house. Get out. I don't want to see your faces anymore.
Julia, let's go.
What?
Mike, I am disappointed in you. I am cutting ties with you as mother and son. I will live with my daughter.
Daughter?
My husband doesn't have any siblings. I was shocked, wondering if she had a secret child, but my mother-in-law said,
Julia is my daughter. Do you have a problem with that?
Mrs. Miller. My husband's eyes widened at these unexpected words. I was on the verge of tears, but somehow held them back. My mother-in-law and husband are blood-related. If my husband and I divorce, my mother-in-law and I would be strangers. But his mother called me her daughter. Ever since we got married, I felt it. She treasured me like her own daughter. Her love was genuine. My husband, now pale, glared at his mother.
What the hell are you saying? I'm your biological son and she's just a daughter-in-law. Isn't it obvious who you should value more? Of course, without a second thought, I choose my real daughter, Julia. A man who cheats and shows no remorse is not my son.
Whether my husband felt the firm resolve in his mother's words or not, he silently walked away like a ghost and went into his study. I quickly packed my things and started living at my mother-in-law's place. Thankfully, I had a job and, like my husband said, my mother-in-law had some savings. With my mother-in-law's advice, I officially divorced and cut ties completely with him. I wonder if he'll be all right, as he brought this on himself. It scares me that I can coldly think about whether some thugs will get him or something else. Instead, I worry if Miley will be okay. I don't know if this was the right thing to do. Marriage is when two strangers live together, so love is what's most important. When love fades, everything crumbles quickly. But I don't think this marriage was a mistake. I met my mother-in-law. We continue to get along like real mother and daughter and have happy days. My parents were surprised at first, but when I told them about the rough 6 months, they understood. I am happy now. Happiness is not something that is given by others. It is something you have to earn. When men meet their fiancé's parents, they often say, I swear I will make your daughter happy. But it's not about having a man make you happy. The source of happiness is within oneself. There is infinite potential in my heart. I will live, believing in my own strength.
Can't you even prepare properly? Hurry up and serve the food. You're causing trouble for Mom.
My husband, muttering angrily, left the kitchen with an additional bottle of wine in hand. Of course, he didn't show any sign of offering to help. I silently started cleaning up the broken plates. I've had enough. Why is it always me? What's wrong? At that moment, it seemed that my late-arriving father-in-law heard the sound of the broken plates and showed up in the kitchen. He looked surprised as he saw the many dishes laid out in the cooking area.
So many. Did you make all of this by yourself?
In response to my father-in-law's attitude, I sarcastically replied with a half-resigned tone. It's always like this. And I stood up, gathering the broken fragments of the plates. Seeing me like that, my father-in-law seemed at a loss for words. His expression of surprise turned into a look of anger, clearly noticing the difference from when we last met, an exhausted version of me.
I'm going to ask my wife what she's thinking. You come too.
With those words, my father-in-law took me to the living room. My name is Catherine Rose, 32 years old. I've been married to my husband, Mike, who is 3 years older than me, for almost a year now. Before I got married, I was an outpatient nurse at a small pediatric clinic, but I recently moved to a general hospital in the same city to improve my skills. It's been a year since we got married, so according to the general perception, we would still be considered newlyweds. However, we are living with my mother-in-law at in-laws' house since the first day of our marriage. Since my father-in-law is working away from home, my mother-in-law is left alone, and my husband worries her, so he suggested that we should live with her. At first, I thought having more people living together would be reassuring. I believed that we could help and support each other during busy times. But that turned out to be a huge misconception, and I would soon come to realize that. Catherine, that's awful. It was the first time I experienced a night shift since changing jobs. After finishing work at the unfamiliar hours from midnight to 8:30 a.m. and returning home feeling exhausted, I was greeted by my mother-in-law's displeased remark. It was 9 a.m. in the morning. My husband had already left for work, probably while I was on the way home. However, this time of the day is when people in the neighborhood often pass by our house. Whether my mother-in-law knew it or not, she aggressively approached me with a loud voice that could be heard outside.
You didn't even prepare breakfast for me. What's the meaning of this? Huh? Breakfast?
Caught off guard by the sudden question, I pondered its meaning and became perplexed. Because I had prepared breakfast for both of us last night and left for work. So most likely, my husband ate my mother-in-law's portion as well. Even when I pointed that out, my mother-in-law insisted that I was deliberately trying to annoy her. In the end, I had to make breakfast for my mother-in-law again, rubbing my sleepy eyes.
You're such an inflexible daughter-in-law, causing me trouble.
While making me prepare breakfast again, my mother-in-law didn't utter a single word of gratitude. Rather, she would take a bite and start complaining, saying things like it's too flavorful or it's too salty. But I was feeling sleepy and my head was foggy, so I decided to ignore those complaints and just leave the room as quickly as possible to go to bed. However, my mother-in-law heartlessly stopped me.
Hey, Catherine, where do you think you're going? There are still dishes to be cleaned.
I'm sorry, mother-in-law.
I just finished my night shift, could you please take care of the cleanup? Huh? What are you talking about? Cooking includes cleaning, you know, and I specifically left the cleaning and laundry for you to do. So, if you want to rest, do those chores first, okay?
Then at least after I rest. Why are you so entitled? You're my daughter-in-law, right? Well, I'm not a monster, but it would be different if you had children. But you don't have any, right?
I understand.
It seemed like I wouldn't be allowed to rest just yet. I forced myself, feeling as heavy as lead, to complete the chores as instructed by my mother-in-law. Leave the household chores to me when you have children. That has been my mother-in-law's favorite phrase lately. And it subtly implies, still no children? I suppose it's because my husband is the only son, so the expectations for grandchildren are concentrated on me.
The wife of my friend apparently got pregnant on their honeymoon. And another person I know is already a mother of 3. I envy them. I really want to see my grandchild soon.
I don't need to be told. I want to conceive as soon as possible too. At the very least, if I do conceive, I'll be liberated from this unpleasant daily life. But it hasn't happened. I've been taking care of my body for the past year, tried supplements, and even visited a church for the blessings of fertility. I thought I had tried everything, but still. Finally, when I finished the tasks with great effort, I turned to my mother-in-law to say, I'm going to rest now. But before I could say anything, she smiled and said,
Good job. It's time for your nap. I want pasta for lunch.
In the end, I was able to go to bed only when the clock had long passed noon.
Hey, darling. About our fertility treatment, the doctor at the clinic says they'd like us to come in together to properly develop a treatment plan. So, could you keep this coming Saturday free?
One night, when my husband's overtime and my work shift didn't coincide, I told the results from my initial visit to the fertility specialist clinic to him. Even though it was my first visit, all I did was submit my basal body temperature chart, get a blood test, and have a brief consultation.
Huh? That's the first I'm hearing about it. you told me to go to the hospital when I'm concerned about not being able to have children. I did say that, but why do I have to go too?
I understand why my husband would have questions. Even though it's a different field, I initially believed that infertility treatment was something women should handle on their own. That's why I went alone for the first consultation. But there, the attending doctor explained to me that treatment requires the cooperation of both husband and wife. To achieve pregnancy, it's important to assess the normalcy of both the wife's and husband's reproductive functions. By thoroughly examining aspects such as the volume and concentration of semen, as well as the motility and morphology of sperm, abnormalities such as azoospermia and oligospermia can be detected. Depending on the results, it could greatly influence the subsequent treatment plan. In other words, it is quite crucial for a semen test to be conducted during infertility treatments.
So, they'll explain the treatment plan to you as well. Why should I listen? It's got nothing to do with me. That's not true. This is a matter for us as a couple, isn't it? Put yourself in my shoes, having to face your mother each time and being asked if we have a child yet. Don't speak ill of my mother. Isn't it because you're infertile that we're in this situation? Please get it sorted out quickly. That's why I need your cooperation. In addition to checking the fallopian tubes and follicles for infertility treatments, a semen test is absolutely necessary. I'm healthy and there's no problem. Our marital life is going on as usual and the volume is adequate, isn't it? So, there's no need for a test. Then prove it. What if my colleagues saw me going there? Are you trying to make me look bad? Anyway, I'm absolutely not doing it.
Did I ask in a wrong way? My husband seemed to have taken offense, and, as if to say the conversation was over, he pulled the blanket over himself and started snoring loudly. Looking down at him, I let out a deep sigh. The existence of night shifts, I think, is one of the symbols that being a nurse is a unique occupation. The composition of night shift schedules varies by medical institution, but at my workplace after changing jobs, we basically work in 3 shifts, so in addition to daytime duties, there are 4 to 5 night shifts a month, and about 8 shifts including late night shifts. But what's hard is not the irregular working system. It's the amount of instructions from my mother-in-law given at home one after another. Although nurses are supposed to be exempted from daytime duties after a night shift, since I have to do housework, I actually had no days off. If I knew this reality was waiting for me from the start, I wouldn't have considered changing jobs. My mother-in-law started to get tough on me after we were married for a year. It's unbelievable to see my current mother-in-law, but she didn't force me to do all these household chores right after we got married. Is it because I haven't been able to conceive a child no matter how much time passes? After maintaining such a lifestyle for just over half a year, my body, which was once in a healthy shape when I first got married, had now become so skinny that my bones were visible, transforming into an obviously sickly figure. But oddly enough, neither my mother-in-law nor my husband seemed to notice my changes. Because we see each other every day, we might just overlook some things because of that. One day in the summer, my husband approached me with a gleeful look, having a plan in mind. Mom's turning 60 this Sunday, and we're gonna have a party for her. She's pretty pumped and wants to invite a bunch of friends, so could you help out with the prep? Saying so, he handed me a piece of paper. Written in my mother-in-law's handwriting were the names and contact information of the guests, the menu for the meal, the specified tableware, the order of serving the dishes, and even the brands of alcohol to be prepared. What was astonishing was the number of guests and the schedule. With my father-in-law's name taken for granted, I blurted out, 10 people. Cooking for that many with this menu. And on Sunday, I'm just off a night shift.
Can't be helped. Mom insists it has to be that day. You'll be fine. You're always up until mid-afternoon anyways. It's a daytime celebration, no problem.
And with that, he left me standing there, shocked.
I bet neither of them are gonna help,
I thought, strangely certain of this amidst my stunned thoughts. The morning of the 60th birthday party arrived, and I staggered home, just off a night shift as usual. I began the household chores and party preparations as my mother-in-law instructed. Having done the laundry and cleaning the night before seemed to have helped, but some of the food that was supposed to be bought in advance had been eaten by husband, so I had to go shopping again. Thanks to this mishap, guests began to arrive at our home before I even started making the main dish. While my mother-in-law, all dressed up and full of energy, showed the guests around, I hurriedly prepared drinks, a few appetizers, and glasses. I'd managed to finish the main course while they were enjoying these. But time was already tight, yet I kept pushing myself. Yet, catching up once you've fallen behind is easier said than done.
What are you doing, Catherine? You're slow.
It seemed my mother-in-law had given some sort of instruction. Just when I was about to finish up the main dish, my husband came stomping into the kitchen. Looking at the scene of dishes still not served, he furrowed his brow.
Not ready yet. Can't you prepare properly? Serve the food quick. Don't trouble Mom.
He grumbled and grabbed the wine bottle that had been left to breathe. At that moment, the stacked plates for serving collapsed. Several fell from the counter and shattered. They were my mother-in-law's favorite plates, and I turned pale. But Mike looked calm.
Shouldn't have stacked them there,
he said, and then he left the kitchen. Of course, there was no sign of him helping. I squatted down on the floor and quietly started cleaning up the broken plates. I'm so tired of this. Why is it always just me? What's happened? A gentle voice reached my ears. Surprised, I turned around. There was my father-in-law, John, standing at the kitchen entrance with a large bag. He had apparently arrived late. Oh, a plate broke, did it? Are you hurt? His words, devoid of reprimand and filled with genuine concern, unexpectedly warmed my eyes. I can't remember the last time someone spoke so kindly to me in this house. After all, I haven't seen John since New Year's. John came over to me, squatted down, and helped me clean up the broken plates. He then looked surprised at the abundance of food in the kitchen. All of this, Catherine? Did you make all this by yourself? He looked around for anyone else who might have helped with the preparations. But there was no one else to be found. He was never there from the start, in this house. I half-heartedly said in self-mockery, in response to my father-in-law's demeanor. It's always the same thing, you know. Then, I gathered the shards of dishes I had cleaned up and stood up. Seeing me like that seemed to leave my father-in-law at a loss for words. I was not the same as when we met before, a clear image of me, worn out. My hair and skin were in a terrible state, dark circles under my eyes, and no traces of the cheerfulness I once had. The mountain of dishes in front of me and my words. All the pieces led him to a single conclusion. The surprise on his face turned into anger.
I'm going to ask my wife what she's up to. You should come too,
he said in a tone lower than I've ever heard, about to leave the kitchen. I hurriedly stopped him.
But the cooking isn't finished yet. You don't need to do it.
He silenced my small resistance. Then, my father-in-law took me to the living room. When we got to the living room, my mother-in-law was pouring the wine my husband had brought for their guests while chatting with them.
Catherine, dear, how much longer will you keep us waiting? Oh, you're finally here, too. Everyone, this is my husband, John. He's been working away from home for a long time, but he came back especially for me today.
As my mother-in-law introduced John, the guests gave a polite nod. In response, John gave a slight bow.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming today. I'm John, her husband. My stupid wife always appreciates your kindness. Oh, John, you're so mean, calling me a fool. You know it's my 60th birthday today, right? A fool is a fool, not a sign of humility, but the real thing. What?
That single word, and the cheerful atmosphere in the room instantly turned silent. John, who had me standing hidden behind him, had me stand beside him and turned back to the guests.
Let me introduce you. This is Catherine, my son's wife. John, dear, Catherine is still busy with preparations.
Ignoring his wife's attempt to stop him, John continued. A year and a half ago, she married our son. She was a cheerful girl with a big heart, and above all, she had a wonderful smile. I was sure that she would bring a bright future to our son. But how does she look to you all now? At least half a year ago, she wasn't this worn out and she didn't look lifeless. As John stopped speaking, whispers spread among the guests. She looks so different from the photos. She's obviously lost too much weight. Listening to them, John turned to his wife.
Explain why Catherine has changed so much. I don't know. Isn't it because her work is too hard? She switched to a hospital with night shifts after New Year's, remember? So you're saying that all of Catherine's colleagues are in this state of health? That's a clear violation of labor laws. I need to contact the Healthcare Workers Union. No, that's not it. You're still playing dumb? I heard it. You've been working Catherine to the bone without giving her a break. Even today, she just finished a night shift. And you let her handle all the cooking for this many people alone.
That's how it happened. When I stepped from the kitchen into the living room, I opened up to my father-in-law about everything.
For the past 6 months, I was given hardly any days off and lived my days like a maid.
My mother-in-law turned her face away, unable to argue, and then my father-in-law stared hard at my husband.
You too, Mike. You knew Catherine has been going through this, so why did you do nothing?
Well, isn't that a problem between Catherine and Mom?
I have nothing to do with it. What did you vow at the wedding? Didn't you promise to protect and make her happy? Does she look happy to you now?
Well, yeah, there were times when I thought things were getting out of hand. But Mom said that it's natural for a wife without a child.
A man should prioritize his spouse over his mother. You drove your previous wife to the edge. Did you forget your past divorce?
At my father-in-law's words, my husband fell silent, his face turning beet red. And I, too, looked up at my husband with my mouth agape in surprise. I knew he had been married before, and I had decided to marry him knowing this. But I had no idea that his ex-wife had been treated in the same way as I am now. But while I was surprised, a part of my mind somehow oddly accepted, so that's what happened.
Let me tell you this, doing this much work is only natural for a daughter-in-law without children. A year and a half into marriage and still not blessed with a child, you're failing as a wife. This woman is. Even if she is infertile, there's no fault in that. So, your claim is simply venting your anger. What? What do you know, you who've been away from home all the time? You don't know, do you? The misery of being the only one without a grandchild while everyone else is bragging about theirs. I wanted a grandchild so badly.
With that, my mother-in-law finally broke down crying. I felt a bit sorry for her, but that didn't make the physical and mental pain I had endured for the past 6 months disappear. Even more so because there was a history with his ex-wife.
It's impossible, you know. I'm sure no grandchild will ever come to you.
I said so firmly, and then I thrust a few scraps of paper I had brought from my room into my mother-in-law's face. It was the result of the tests at the fertility clinic I was attending.
Blood tests, AMH, uterine tube patency tests, anti-sperm antibody tests, etc. Everything was normal. My body is fine. If the same was true for your previous wife, there's only one answer to be drawn from that. The problem is with you, Mike. Huh? You must have had an inkling, right? That's why you were so resistant to the tests, weren't you? Yet, instead of defending me, you treated me like a housemaid along with your mom. Until now, I had been quiet about these test results because I still loved you. But today, after being yelled at again, and not getting any help, and finding out you had done the same to your ex-wife, I just don't care anymore. Let's get a divorce, Mike. Wait a minute. You're saying I'm sterile, that's not true, is it? If you feel that way, why not just get a proper checkup? To be honest, I couldn't care less about the result anymore.
Having had my say, I turned my back on my husband, who was persistently making some excuse, and my sobbing mother-in-law, and left the living room. Just before I closed the door, I faintly heard the guests getting up from their seats one after another. After that, my husband and I formally divorced through our lawyers. My husband tried to fight it, but thanks to my father-in-law recording our conversation that day in the living room, it was recognized that I had been suffering emotional abuse from my husband and mother-in-law for 6 months. Moreover, my husband reportedly had a semen analysis which confirmed that he was indeed infertile, and my mother-in-law was apparently livid. After the divorce proceedings between my husband and me concluded successfully, astonishingly, my former in-laws decided to divorce as well. According to my former father-in-law, I had hoped that Mike would reflect on his behavior towards his ex-wife and change, but it didn't happen. I received an apology from John for not realizing the situation sooner and not ensuring his son took a sperm test before we got married. A year later, according to a rumor, my former mother-in-law, who was kicked out of her ex-husband's house, is now living in a public housing complex in the same city with my ex-husband. And she's apparently been cut off from her former friends. Moreover, the rumors spread through those friends, and now my ex-husband is reportedly having a tough time at his workplace. I was then introduced to a man by John, and after 6 months of dating, we got married. This man is a subordinate of John's, whom he highly trusts. Now, we are living happily together. Recently, I found out that I'm 2 months pregnant when I visited the gynecologist, so we're planning to share the news with John soon. After all, he is the matchmaker for us and the person who saved me from a difficult situation.